That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Every year, there is one offense that surprises everyone in fantasy football. I mean, if you were to just go through and draft their starting QB, their starting running back, their wide receiver 1, their wide receiver 2, and their tight end, you are just crushing your competition. This past season, it was the Cincinnati Bengals. If we go through and we look at these ADPs, Joe Burrow was being drafted as the quarterback 13, Joe Mixon, the running back 13, Jamar Chase, the wide receiver 31, and T. Higgins, the wide receiver 25. Now, if you went out of your way and you said, you know what? I'm looking at Joe Burrow stepping into year 2. I believe in this offense. I believe in the quarterback play. It's going to be dramatically improved. And if we believe that one thing, if we can be accurate in our prediction that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be a top 5 to 10 offense in the NFL when the fantasy football community is not valuing their assets in that light, if you just push all your chips in the middle, it's the easiest way to win. Because just think about it. Please sit down and think about it for 1 second. I know not many people like to stack these players on the same teams, but if you were to be able to just bet on one offense, you only have to get one bet right. Whereas if I'm to go through and say instead of last year, I wanted to draft in the second round, we went Nick Chubb over Joe Mixon. And then later on in the draft, we decided instead of grabbing Jamar Chase, we wanted Tyler Lockett. And then instead of getting T. Higgins, say we just wanted another random wide receiver. Even if you smashed on that pick, let's say you took Jalen Waddle, you had a massive hit. Well, what has to happen for you to have that massive boom potential? You have to be right about 3 different offensive environments. You have to be correct that the Cleveland Browns are going to have a significant amount of trips to the red zone. You have to be correct that Russell Wilson is going to stay healthy all season. You have to be correct that Jalen Waddle is going to have a massive breakout in Miami. Why not just make one bet? Why not make one bet? And if it's right, all those players drastically outproduce their ADP. So what I'm going to try to do in this video is I'm going to try to go through and identify that offense this upcoming season. But before we get into it, please go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football, leave a comment letting me know what offense you think is going to have that leap going into this upcoming season. And of course, if you're wondering, why are we talking about fantasy football? It's May because I'm drafting leagues every single day on Underdog Fantasy. On Underdog Fantasy, you can go out there, have some fun, get into drafts. Their lobby is getting filled like every draft, 5 to 10 minutes. And when you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they will match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. You will also get our 2022 rankings, our 2022 Dynasty rankings, and our 2022 Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, over 100 pages. Go sign up for Underdog Fantasy, get into some drafts with us in the live streams. But let's revisit that Cincinnati Bengals type situation. Hopefully I've done a good enough job illustrating that going and betting in on that one offense is going to dramatically raise your ceiling. And not only is it going to raise your ceiling, but it's also going to make it more likely that you get to that ceiling. Now, I will have to talk about the other side of the coin here, and that's going to be is 100% going to lower your floor. And if I'm sitting here and looking you in the eyes, I cannot tell you that you are guaranteed to win your fantasy football league if you follow this advice. Because, of course, if you were to, instead of going and betting on the Cincinnati Bengals last year, if you looked at the entire landscape of the NFL and you went, you know what? I really believe in Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, the first overall pick. He's supposed to be a generational quarterback prospect. I really want to go in. I'm going to be taking Trevor Lawrence. You know what? I'm going to take James Robinson, and I'm going to take Laviska Shenault, the presumably wide receiver 1, or maybe you want DJ Chark, whatever it is. And if that situation falls apart, just imagine how bad your team would have been. It didn't matter if you took Mark Andrews and Cooper Kupp. You would have been done from the beginning. But what do we always go back to? Numbers, numbers, numbers. Every time that you go into a fantasy football draft, especially on Underdog, those drafts are 12-team leagues. You go in there. What is the probability that you win your league on average? If everybody is the exact same there, it's give or take. Now, should we go into that league saying, okay, I got to protect my 8%. I got to make sure I hold on. No, you need to understand that 9 out of 10 times you are going to lose your league. Going through and worrying about getting 8th place instead of 12th, why are we wasting our time here? What I would rather have happen is I would rather draft 100 teams this upcoming season, and 20 of those teams I get first. Hell yeah, I crushed it. And 80 of those teams I get dead last. I'm the laughing stock of the league. Everybody's looking at me, pointing at me, laughing at me, saying, you know what, Mason? You are a bum. You have no idea what you're doing. And if you can move that win rate from about 8% up to 15, 16%, you are one of the best drafters in fantasy football. And with how much money is in those underdog contests, you can be printing money. Okay, so let's not worry about lowering our floor. I don't care if I get last place in over half my leagues this upcoming season. If I can raise my ceiling and raise the probability that I hit that ceiling in enough leagues where we can come away with a lot of first place and second place finishes. So that should be enough. I really hope that we've done at least a halfway decent job at explaining why stacking is profitable and why it's something you need to be doing in your fantasy football league. And if we were going to go through and if we were going to try to identify an offense to take a step up, I think I have an idea of where most people are going to go, because this is an offense that has a young quarterback actually in the same draft class as Joe Burrow, about the same age as well. And if we are looking, they just added a top 5 wide receiver to their offense this upcoming season. Very similar to what happened in Cincinnati. You went through and you added Jamar Chase, a top 5 receiver, alongside a very talented younger option in T. Higgins. Hell, that's exactly what you have with the Miami Dolphins here when they go out of their way and they trade for Tyreek Hill, who should have the speed to open up the offense, and they also have Jalen Waddle playing alongside them. I know that's going to be everyone's initial reaction. However, I don't think this is the correct answer, because we need to revisit what made the Cincinnati Bengals such a profitable team to bet on. There was upside. And what I mean by upside is upside to profit. You weren't taking Jamar Chase in the second round of your fantasy draft. You weren't taking T. Higgins in the third round. You were getting these players as wide receiver 31 and wide receiver 25. So you were able to build around cornerstone assets at the running back position. You were able to go out and get studs elsewhere. You could have taken Cooper Kupp as your wide receiver 1 and still come away with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Whereas with the Miami Dolphins, you don't have that same level of upside. It's almost baked into their ADP. It's almost baked into the price point that you have for these receivers that this is going to be a good offense. And if that's already being priced in, there's not that much space to profit, because right now you have Tyreek Hill being drafted as the wide receiver 8 on Underdog Fantasy. And I'm not going to lie, I've gone out there and I've drafted Tyreek Hill at the beginning of the second round, the middle of the second round, and I've seen his ADP just continuously fall since then. I mean, now I recently took Tyreek, I believe at the 212. Now Tyreek Hill falls to the 212, the 301. Sure, I'll take him there, but we've learned our lessons in going and paying that price point, because for him to return value, you legitimately have to have Tua Tagovailoa with a top 10 quarterback season. And I would say the same thing about Jalen Waddle on Underdog Fantasy. Jalen Waddle is currently being drafted as the wide receiver 13 at the beginning of the second round. Previously, you had Keenan Allen being drafted behind Jalen Waddle. Now, if we go and look at Tua Tagovailoa, the reason why I am very hesitant, and I repeat, very hesitant to just buy into these prices with the Miami Dolphins turning into the next Cincinnati Bengals, Tua was bad last year. Now, I know there are going to be a lot of Tua Tagovailoa fans. Every time I say that Zach Wilson was bad last year, pretty much people hunt me down, try to find my address so they can come in here and God knows do what to me as I'm recording a video. Like, people get upset when you say their quarterback's bad. But if we go back, 204 passing yards a game. Yes, I know some people are going to say, oh, well, some of those games weren't full games played, Mason. Is that unfair to say? Oh, yeah, that's unfair to say. So what we can look at instead is we can Go and look at his adjusted yards per pass attempt at 6.5 for his adjusted yards per pass attempt. 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. And yeah, he got injured, but he played 12 games. Tua Tagovailoa, if you look at his first and second season, we have a full year of data for Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, if we compare Joe Burrow, his rookie season, to Tua's second year, Joe Burrow was the more impressive quarterback year one in arguably a worse situation with the Cincinnati Bengals. Clearly, the team went out there, got a top 5 draft pick. That's not the situation the Miami Dolphins are in. And if we go through and look at the offenses that were less efficient throwing the ball than the Miami Dolphins. Very simple. We're just going to look at yards per pass attempt. Of course, there are better statistics you could look at, but this is going to paint the picture perfectly. Okay, so you have the New York Giants, the worst passing offense last year. The Carolina Panthers, the second worst. Then you have the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right before the Miami Dolphins. Those are the 4 offenses. And yeah, I know. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they provided a lot of value for someone like Deontay Johnson, but they went out there and threw the ball 664 times. The coaching staff coming over to Miami, this is a coaching staff from Kyle Shanahan. We know, what does Kyle Shanahan like to do? Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. They went out there and they signed Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, and Sony Michel. Like, this team, they're indicating to us that they want to run. So you're not going to get the 664 pass attempts that you had with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The other teams that were right in this range with Miami, the Detroit Lions, the New York Jets, the Houston Texans, and the Chicago Bears. Yeah, not great if we're looking at the yards per pass. I find it very hard to believe that Tua Tagovailoa takes a jump up to be a top 10 quarterback. Now, of course, he can improve. He can improve. Maybe the Miami Dolphins aren't the 5th least efficient passing offense in the NFL this upcoming season. Maybe they're the 15th. Maybe they are the 14th. Maybe they are going from a bottom 5 to a league average, which would be a significant improvement. But are we profiting off that? I don't think so. With Tyreek Hill being the wide receiver 8. I don't think so with Jalen Waddle being the wide receiver 13. I think it's already baked in. So if I'm going through and I'm trying to bet on one overall offense, what am I looking for? I'm looking for elite quarterback play. I'm looking for elite efficiency. And I found a quarterback whose wide receiver 1 is currently being drafted as the wide receiver 46. I found a quarterback that over the past 2 seasons, he's been top 10 in the NFL in his yards per pass attempt. 2 years ago in 2020, he was the 3rd quarterback in his yards per pass attempt. And listen to his wide receiver finishes since 2012. So I know it's a boring option. He's old, and that's why he's not going to be as exciting. People aren't going to try to predict Aaron Rodgers to go out there and have that elite jump up whenever it's more fun to say it with Tua Tagovailoa, with Zach Wilson. And I know I'm being boring here, but please hear me out on how these players are severely undervalued. If we go through, if we look at the history of Aaron Rodgers' top receiver since 2012, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 6, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 9, wide receiver 2. So the last time Aaron Rodgers, his wide receiver 1 was not a top 10 option, 2015. I just got to high school, 2015. Then you had Randall Cobb, wide receiver 29. But before that, Randall Cobb, wide receiver 6. Randall Cobb, wide receiver 7. Randall Cobb, wide receiver 4. We go to 2016, Jordy Nelson, wide receiver 2. We can go back previous to this, guys like Richard Rodgers. We can find so many wide receivers that have finished as top 10 options. Now, of course, there's nobody in Green Bay that has half the talent of Devante Adams. Devante Adams has more talent in his left pinky finger than you're going to find in Christian Watson's entire body, in Christian Watson's son. It doesn't really matter. Devante Adams is a significantly better receiver. But when you're seeing Randall Cobb with top 10 finishes multiple years in a row, when you're seeing Jordy Nelson finish as the wide receiver 2, when you're seeing the continued production of a multitude of different players that have just been attached to Aaron Rodgers, maybe it's unfair to assume that any wide receiver in Green Bay this upcoming season finishes as a top 10 option. You would have to be on drugs to say so. But can we say that it's almost a lock that one of these guys finishes as a top 30 option? That has to be the floor. That has to be the floor. I mean, drafters are still looking at Aaron Rodgers as someone that's going to be an elite passer. He's going as the quarterback 12 on Underdog. We know he has no rushing upside whatsoever. So if you're taking a stationary quarterback as quarterback 12, that's about borderline top 5 to 6 player in overall passing yards. Yet you're looking at the receiver core. Christian Watson, wide receiver 46. Allen Lazard, wide receiver 50. Sammy Watkins, wide receiver 74. Romeo... the options beyond that aren't even being drafted in every Underdog draft. Now, I don't necessarily think these wide receivers are the most egregiously priced. I think the league-winning running back may just be Aaron Jones. Because what I want to look at is this offense and Aaron Jones' usage without Devante Adams. Devante Adams, he's gotten hurt a decent amount of times over the past, I want to say, 4 years now. So we're going to go back to 2019. And we are going to track every single game that you have had Aaron Jones without Devante Adams. 2021, you had 1 week of it. You had 7 receptions, 110 total yards, and a touchdown. The main thing I want to focus in on here, receptions, yards, and touchdowns, because Devante Adams is a black hole when it comes to the red zone. He is going to soak up every single touchdown in the offense he's playing in. So when he's gone, they're running more. They're giving that ball to Aaron Jones more. In 2020, you had a game with 4 receptions, 236 yards, 3 touchdowns. A couple other games that were not equally as impressive, but still impressive. 2019, you had a 4-week stretch. And in week 5 this season, you had 7 receptions, 182 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And in week 8, 7 receptions, 226 yards, and 2 touchdowns. There were 8 games where Devante Adams missed, yet Aaron Jones played. And in those 8 games, Aaron Jones averaged 5 receptions, 137 total yards, and he averaged 1.6 touchdowns per game. Yeah, that's unbelievable. Now, I will say, there is no way in hell you can come out here and you can say, yeah, that's the expectation for Aaron Jones this upcoming season. Because of course, you have A.J. Dillon there. A.J. Dillon is an improvement on Jamal Williams from previous seasons. And on top of it, Aaron Jones is older than he once was. I would imagine that Aaron Jones on a per touch basis is probably going to be losing a step with his efficiency. But this was 28 fantasy points per game, 28 and a half. The only running back to come close to this over the past, as long as I can remember, Christian McCaffrey 2019. That's the type of production we're talking about. And remember, here with Aaron Jones, he has never been used as a bell cow running back. He has always been in a committee in Green Bay, and he has always gotten his value based on his receiving game usage as well as his red zone usage. So A.J. Dillon will be an improvement over Jamal Williams, and maybe you see that eat into the carries per game from Aaron Jones. But as long as we still have those 2 assets in the valuable touches in this offense, dear God, Aaron Jones right now being drafted at the beginning of the 3rd round of Underdog drafts clearly should at least be going in the middle of the 2nd. At the minimum, should be going mid round 2. And going over to Christian Watson, a rookie wide receiver, of course, you don't have a great track record of young wide receivers in Green Bay with Rodgers, but nonetheless, being drafted as the wide receiver 46, this is someone that was the 2nd pick in the 2nd round of this year's NFL draft. That's a very similar range of what you have with the guys like T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, and he dominated in college. Over 44% of his passing game production on a per game basis went in the direction of Christian Watson. He broke out as a sophomore. He is an elite size adjusted athlete. Now, I will admit 100% with Christian Watson, he has a couple red flags coming from a small school. And on top of this, he is very old coming into the NFL. But as we've said, if you've been watching our Dynasty channel, Christian Watson's the one player I'm willing to overwrite the age with, because his junior season, he had to play spring football. That's why Trey Lance only had 1 year starting. Trey Lance was lucky enough to be so good in his 1 year that he locked himself into being a top 5 NFL draft pick. However, Christian Watson, that wasn't the case. So he had to go back to school for his final year there, which definitely sucks for his capital. But still, if you're looking at every other box being checked and you're looking at his target competition being Sammy Watkins and Allen Lazard, it's hard to imagine a player with more upside. Now, someone that I hated, and I literally mocked people for taking him in drafts last year, looks like I'll be drafting this season, is Robert Tunion. Because here with Robert Tunion, I mean, we go back to 2020, damn near a top 5 tight end on a points per game basis. Now, how did he do this? Was he a main cog in this Green Bay Packers offense? Honestly, not really. This is someone that averaged 3.7 targets per game. He had about 36 receiving yards per game. But when you're playing with Rodgers, there are touchdowns to go around. We know Aaron Rodgers, historically speaking, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and there's going to be an extreme amount of efficiency there. So you have 11 touchdowns off of really no volume whatsoever. This led him to be drafted as the tight end 9 in 2021, which all you needed to see was his touchdown rate and do some quick little math, like get out this, write about 3 numbers down, and then you realize, wait, he scored a touchdown on 1 out of every 6 targets, and there's Devante Adams in the offense, the best red zone wide receiver in football. Yeah, that didn't happen again. So you fade him, but did his role change? Not really. He had 3.6 targets per game, right where he was in 2020. Now, people kind of realize these touchdowns are fluky. They're going to go up and down. So now you're getting Robert Tunion drafted as the tight end 14 on Underdog. But his situation is so much better than where it was last year, because it's not like Aaron Rodgers is any worse. And while I'm saying that you probably should be drafting Christian Watson if everybody else is taking him as the wide receiver 46, almost the wide receiver 5, I'm not saying Christian Watson's going to be Devante Adams. Of course we can't say that. There's still going to be a ton of touchdown upside in this offense. And if you can now get Robert Tunion as your tight end 2 on Underdog, hell, go out there and grab him. I hope this video was able to help some people out. I hope that you were able to get something from it. Please go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football, and go have some fun. Get into some drafts on Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK. I think that should be it. Hope you have a great day, and hope we get to see you out with the video tomorrow.